Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
We welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Wednesday, February 17th. I'm Gary Stevens. We'll reopen the phone lines for general conversation after the 11 o'clock news block, but we are pleased as he joins us pretty much on a monthly basis whenever meetings are coming up. The president of the Ottawa County Patriots joining us via the Zoom connection. He is Steve Redmond. Steve, good morning and welcome back to Talk of the Town and Happy New Year. I haven't had a chance to chat with you since before the year's break.
Good morning, Gary. I'm very glad to be here.
It is a new year, but the first meeting, well, actually the second meeting of the year, I believe, for the Ottawa County Patriots deals with an old subject that some might say, can we move on? Others are saying, let's get to the bottom of this, and that is the 2020 general election, mostly on a national basis, but also on a statewide basis as well.
Yeah, this is an important issue. The original title for our meeting was Faith, Family, and Freedoms Under Attack, and that kind of goes without saying. If you just pay attention to the news, you know that's true. But one issue we want to deal with at this next meeting is the 2020 election fraud and what you can do about it. And we have an excellent couple of speakers. One, Pat Colbeck, who's a former two-term state senator and candidate for governor in Michigan, and also an aerospace engineer, basically has been extremely involved in this. He's given testimony in Michigan at the Senate and House hearings, I believe. He's been going all over the country. He was very active in poll monitoring and poll watching and so forth in Michigan. And he is also featured in Mike Lindell's sort of banned video, Absolute Proof, that is pretty compelling information that's available. It's on our website, by the way, ottawacountypatriots.org. There's a link to that. You can just go to our website, click on it, and even if you just watch the first few minutes, if even a fraction of it is accurate and true, it's pretty frightening. I think that most citizens, regardless of their political interest or background or voting record, believe in free and fair elections. That's part of our birthright, that one man, one vote is kind of what we expect. And what much of the media, yourself excluded, are telling us is that this was the best election ever. There was no fraud or any irregularities of any kind anywhere. And if you believe that, I've got some swampland in Florida I'd like to sell you. Basically, all kinds of things were happening, and the media has really tried to cover it up. Some of the big social media networks have tried to ban it. But the reality is, regardless of how you voted in the election, we need to have free and fair elections. Our voter rolls should be clean, should be no dead people on it, shouldn't be people who've moved out of state. And I think very few people would disagree with that. But right now, we have problems in the country and in the state of Michigan. It's often said, well, they did all these court cases and they didn't win any. Actually, that's not true. Of the court cases that actually got heard on election issues, apparently the Trump teams won about 2/3 of them so far. That rarely gets reported on the media. And there are some real compelling things. In Arizona, 42,000 people voted twice. And Biden won that state by about 10 or 15,000 votes. That alone would be reason to look into it. But whatever the issue, we want to make sure that Michigan has free and fair elections. We want to make sure that our voting rolls are clean and well maintained, and that there's no fraud of any kind going on. And that shouldn't be a political issue. That should be just a demand from all citizens that we have free and fair elections. And I think we're going to present some compelling evidence Tuesday night that there are serious issues that need to be addressed. We're not going to undo the election, but unless discrepancies in our voting get taken care of, we may not have fair elections in the future. And that's what this meeting is about, to really address those issues and let people know what went on and what we can do about it, because we do need to work with our legislators to make sure that our voting rolls are clean and our voting process is uncontaminated by interference from anybody, anywhere.
395-1450. If you have a question for Steve Redmond of the Ottawa County Patriots, he'll be happy to answer it. And it looks like we do. Good morning. You're on the line with Steve Redmond.
Yeah, good morning. Well, to add to this, last week we got, for my daughter, for her maiden name, she got married in 97, but they still had her on the records as living here with her maiden name. So it must be they're cleaning up the records now, because, I don't know if that could have caused any fraud of voting, but, if you didn't have to show ID and all this, maybe she could have voted twice.
So what you're saying is pretty much, there's got to be some cleaning up the process, right?
Well, I think so. If, she got married in 97, they still had her on the rolls. Now, I don't know.
Yeah. We'll get Steve's comment on it. Thank you very much for the call, Steve.
Yeah, she raises a good point that when you move or change your name or your address, you should always report that to your local voting officials so they can make sure that they have current updated records. And that's just kind of a given. And you wonder sometimes if you move and your name is still on the rolls, somebody else might appropriate your name and vote, even though it's not you. It could be somebody else. There have been cases like that where dead people voted, dead people even requested absentee ballots. I think that's pretty amazing. I'm a Christian and I read about Lazarus, but I think coming back from the dead to register to vote is a pretty great feat.
It's just, let's put it this way. Like any human institution, Steve, there's going to be problems because it's just the nature of a human institution. Try to correct them. Yeah, that would be great to do. But it's going to take time. And, and I agree with you in the sense that people want to get to the bottom of this. But there are those who will also say, why don't we move on? Why are we bringing this up? It's sort of like bringing back the past, and it's dragging us from trying to move forward on some other things, is, what the country needs to address. How I wouldn't say you, but how should this be handled in the light of that perhaps argument?
Well, the reason I think we can't move on yet is that as long as there's lingering doubt whether we had free and fair elections, it's going to create a pall over the people that did get elected, and it's going to create ambivalence about people voting in the future, thinking, well, my vote probably isn't going to be counted fairly anyway. Why should I bother? So I think to move ahead, we need to find out what happened, and if there were irregularities and problems, we need to clean them up. When you have hundreds of millions of people voting, you're going to have errors just because of human nature. Who hasn't had somebody, I refinanced my house recently, and all these smart people that were doing it had errors in the documents. We had to redo it a couple times. Human error creeps in. So regardless of what your political leanings are, we need to find out what happened. And if there were irregularities, we need to clean them up. And if there were no irregularities, that's great also, because then people can be at peace and not worry about the fraudulent election. But I find it interesting that after the 2016 election, the people on the left did not want to move on. We were dealing with Russia this and Russia that and fraudulent election for 4 years. And now that group has won an election, they want to move on. So it's like, you can't be selective. If you want to move on and do good things, you can't be selective when it benefits you only. And so I think that we need to get to the bottom of it. We need to find out what happened, and we need to correct any errors or irregularities. It's not going to change the election. That's pretty clearly not going to happen, but it can make sure that people have confidence in the next one. And you don't want to drive people away from the polls thinking that the elections are fraud, so why bother anyway? or my vote doesn't count. That's the last thing you want to see happen. And so we can't move on until we can get the majority of people to accept that we have found out what happened and we've corrected it. Then we can move on.
395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with Steve Redmond.
Good morning, Steve. I'm 71 years old. Okay, I started voting when I was 21. You've always heard about people, dead voting. This is nothing new, all right? It hasn't been fixed for that long. It's still here. There's a lot of crooked people in the world that are going to try to vote, figure out a way that they can do it more than once. But the system has always been broken to that point, and it's never been fixed. The only person that brought it to the extreme is the person that lost, but he also planted the seed that the election was going to be rigged long before the election ever happened. And so you have to get over it, start over, okay? Forget this election. This is the worst election that we have ever had as long as I can remember. That somebody bitched, complained that it was a rigged election and that I won, but he didn't. The people spoke. So let's move on. Let's forget it. Fix it, but not talk about it. Because you're not going to fix it by talking about it. You're going to fix it by finding the problem.
And that's, I appreciate the call. Thank you. I have one more call to take, Steve, and let me get to it. Good morning. You're on the line with Steve Redmond.
Amen to this fellow just talking. It's all just been a fraud and a fake election due to Trump. He's a poor loser. You're never going to see the end of him. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. 395-1450. Well, I wouldn't say unfortunately, but hey, we all going to get tapped on the shoulder, Steve. So there will be an end eventually, because we aren't going to live forever, at least not on this mortal plane. But still,
I'd like to respond a little bit to some of the comments. This isn't about Trump anymore. Election's over. It's about making sure we have clean elections. And to the first gentleman that called, your election is very decentralized. Right now, we live in Ottawa County. I also am 72, so I've been voting a long time, as that gentleman has. And you need to work at your local level. And I think in Ottawa County, we have pretty clean elections. I don't have too many complaints. I know Justin Roebuck, and I know the efforts they've been taking for years to make sure that we have good records and good processes in place. But the problem comes in other places. And I don't know if the gentleman realizes, but when they verified the elections in some of the Detroit areas, 2 people on the canvassing board did not want to validate the vote because they thought there were irregularities. Their lives were threatened. Their children were threatened at school. They finally were coerced into signing off, not because they believed that the vote count was accurate, but their lives and their children's lives were being threatened. That is unacceptable in America. It's unacceptable in Michigan. And to say move on is to pretty much whitewash it and say nothing to see here. And I think that we all desire to know the facts and the truth. Some people look for it a little bit harder than others. Some people are complacent and accept whatever the media and the cultural elites tell us we need to believe. But I think we can't move on until we resolve what were the problems and what can be fixed. And yeah, I know the issue about dead voting. Huey Long used to say when he died in Louisiana, bury me in Louisiana because I want to stay active in politics. And that's an old joke, and we've all heard about South Side of Chicago. I have relatives that live there. But it's still unacceptable. And the fact that to buy a bottle of liquor or to get your ears pierced, you got to have photo ID. To go to the Democratic convention, you got to have photo ID. But right now they're pushing photo ID is a racist thing and you shouldn't have to have it. This is ridiculous. So we can't move on until we make sure our process across the state is clean and fair. And I, for one, don't want to move on until we have addressed the problems as best we can. And a lot of people don't get accurate information. We strive at the Patriots to try to bring you facts and truthful information, and we bring the best speakers in we can. And so we think the facts are important and the truth's not important. I sort of always believe seek the truth and accept no substitutes. And I'm not ready to move on until we have some more answers about what went on in Michigan and how we can fix it. Because remember, when they were doing an audit after the last election, because they did not want to move on, they had to stop the recount in Michigan because there were so many voting irregularities in the Detroit area. They couldn't find ballot boxes. Ballot boxes had been tampered with. It was a mess. And so they had to stop the recount because of irregularities. So I'm not ready to move on until we clean up the mess, and then we all can have free and fair elections and be at peace that however the chips fall, at least our vote counted and it was a fair process. That's what we stand for, is let's not move on until we have all the facts.
Good morning. You're on the line with Ottawa County Patriots President Steve Redmond.
Yes, hey, agree with him 100%. I guess my question is, I don't know how many people in Michigan had signed affidavits. I know Rudy Giuliani's got a mitt full of affidavits that were signed saying, hey, there was election fraud. Now, I don't know what happened with those people, but I guess I would like to see one of two things happen. Either the people that signed those affidavits saying there's election fraud, either they go to jail because they lied, or if there was election fraud, the people that committed it go to jail. So one of the two has got to happen. So the only way we're going to figure it out is to investigate it. The problem is the FBI and the DOJ are so compromised, they won't look at it. So where do you go from here?
We'll get Steve's comment on that. Thank you very much for the call, Steve.
Well, I strongly suggest you come to our meeting Tuesday night at Lighthouse Baptist Church at 501 East 24th Street. I believe Pat Colbeck may have been one of the people that swore one of those affidavits because he was very intimately involved in the election, and he's prepared to answer any question. I also encourage the other callers that say move on, come to the meeting, challenge Mr. Colbeck. He wants lots of times for Q&A, and he especially wants people to feel that there was no fraud, to come and challenge him. He's prepared to address all those issues. And he's sent me a ton of information, most of which I haven't read yet. But he's one of the people that I believe may have sworn out an affidavit, which says basically, if what you say in this affidavit isn't true, you've just perjured yourself, and that's illegal, and you could suffer legal consequences. So the gentleman is correct. The people that filled out those affidavits were taking a personal risk and saying, I'm telling the truth, and I'm going to stick my neck out here and sign this affidavit. And if I'm lying, it's perjury, and I'm going to pay a penalty. So there were lots of those people, and there were those people in Michigan also. If you want to get the facts, come to our meeting next Tuesday. It's free and open to the public, and we welcome people from any persuasion, as long as you're not violent and you believe in peaceful, orderly meetings, you're welcome to come.
Steve, let's do the nuts and bolts again of the meeting coming up on Tuesday night. Where, when, how can people get involved, and who will be speaking?
The meeting will be from 7 to 9 o'clock this next Tuesday at the Lighthouse Baptist Church at 501 East 24th Street in Holland. And the doors open at 6:25, and it's free and open to the public. And a little bit about our mission, because we're not a fringe group. We're a grassroots group that's been around for over 10 years. Our mission is basically to promote awareness and understanding of American government, the free enterprise system, traditional American values, and related political or civic issues through education and citizen involvement. And we stress education and citizen involvement. We try to educate you, get you the facts, get you the truth. And then we challenge you to do something about it in whatever sphere of life you live in, because we believe it's not enough just to inform and educate people, you then need to be challenged to do something, because we pay our civic rent by being good citizens in voting and living decent lives and treating our fellow man decently. But oftentimes we're misinformed. We're given erroneous information or disinformation. We try to give you factual, accurate information and then challenge you, if you're not happy with what things look like in your environment, to try to change it in a peaceful and appropriate way, which is the American way.
Now, my question to you is this. How much did January 6th set back the effort to try to get some peaceful change done? Because now there's a perception about people who are looking to get answers, and they point to January 6th and saying, you see, that's what they're really like. And it's almost like, a perception is reality, unfortunately, Steve.
Yeah, and the sad thing is that in any group, you can have people that act inappropriately. And I don't think we still have the facts on what happened in January 6th. Obviously, there were people that acted inappropriately. They broke the law. They should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But how many of them were Trump supporters? How many of them were other types of agitators? And that's something we don't really know. And I'd like to find out. I know people who actually went to the rally and did not break the law and did not act inappropriately. And there's now indications that some of that was pre-planned weeks in advance, and bombs were planted the night before. So you have to question what went on. What went on was not good. But it seems to me that the media is very concerned about January 6th, ignored the last year where we were burning down large parts of urban areas. People were being killed. Police were being attacked. And that was just peaceful protest mostly. And I loved it when the commentator was standing in front of a burning Wendy's saying, well, they're mostly peaceful protest. And you can see the flames leaping up into the air. And it's like, don't believe your lying eyes. So I want to know the facts of what happened. The people that broke the law should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. We never, ever have condoned violence. And the majority of people that I think supported President Trump are not lawbreakers. They're law abiders, and they do not break the law. If there's some that broke the law, then they need to be dealt with.
All right. Steve, we're out of time. Appreciate it. Good luck in the meeting on Tuesday. Hope to talk to you next month or sometime in April.
Thanks, Gary. Always good talking with you.